Hi, my name's Cody, and I'm the organizing director for March for Science Action. And I want to welcome you back to another episode of Black in S.T.E.M. This week, I'm really, really excited because we have amazing guests from a really interesting organization and a really unique organization. And it's called the Hood Medicine Initiative. And it's a nonprofit public health collective made up of scientists, physicians, hackers, and other assorted geeks. And that's their quote. Dedicated to protecting Black and Brown lives throughout the pandemic and beyond. Not only do they host podcasts, both of them have gone to MIT, which I can't get over. They promote vaccine education, help serve underserved communities, and more. And so I'm very, very proud to introduce two representatives from Hood Medicine, Dr. Shanice Hudson and Mr. Jonathan White. So welcome all in. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. And then before I dig too deep into the interview, I do have to know, because y'all have a really unique name and I think that it's awesome, but where did y'all come up with the name Hood Medicine?
It's actually, to me, it's really deeply affecting, and I don't think it's lost on either one of us here that we're here with you today discussing our org and sort of like the progress we've made, but doing that like against the backdrop of the Derek Chauvin trial, like when it was the uprising last year following the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd that kind of spurned us to action in the first place. I mean, and then so we had this, like, again, this perennial Black Lives Matter crisis in the mix of this global airborne pandemic. And so early on last year, I just really started getting frustrated looking around my own community and seeing how like no one was taking it seriously. They're still not. With the lack of national leadership that we had over the last, 18 months. I mean, we were told to drink bleach basically. So we knew Black and Brown communities.
Almost, yeah.
Right. So we knew like Black and Brown communities who are already left behind, right, in every systemic issue related to health disparities. Like we knew we needed to reach out to the hood, to make sure our people had the information they needed, that they understood the stakes, and that they can make the right choices to keep their families safe. And it was just like, boom, Hood Medicine. That's who we are. So
it's very authentic. Like too, it's one of those organizations that maybe if you are somebody who does need the medical care or does need information about COVID-19, that you're like, okay, yeah, this is probably my nonprofit. Like this nonprofit that understands me. And was that kind of a part of the goal, at least, with trying to form it?
Yeah, don't you think, Jonathan?
Yeah, definitely. I think the most important aspect of the work that we do is people looking at us and believing in our credibility and trusting us. And we'll probably get into that, at some point in our discussion, but trust is really underscores everything that we're able to do. If we can't trust the folks that are bringing us information, then that closes a lot of doors to, our safety and our health.
Yeah, for sure. And that will be something that we get into. And before we get there, even, what brought the two of you to Hood Medicine? Like, what inspired y'all to take such active leadership roles? I was telling Jonathan before you hopped on, Dr. Hudson, that you're one of the most responsive people I've ever met on social media. Like 7 minutes later, y'all were like, oh yeah, no, we'd love to do that. Your emails were on everything. So what gave y'all this like fire to come into your field?
Hey, it started with conversations that just evolved into action, because I think I first reached out to Jonathan and then Dolio Durant, who's our resident hacker, because they had been two of my best friends at MIT, and I knew they'd be down, and they were, so.
Yeah.
And then I brought one of my best friends, Jared Lucas Nathanson, on to be like our programming chair. And so we, like, the four of us were like the original founder squad, so ever since then, like, we kind of thought we was going to just try to, get the word out, and it keeps building, you know what I mean? So that's why I'm like, if you hit me up, I'm hitting you back, what I mean?
Yeah, it's really exciting. What about you, Dr. Jonathan?
Real simple. Nisi called me. She and I had a really brief conversation about how we could talk to people in our communities about the seriousness of COVID. Because as she said, we just kept seeing it play over social media. We saw it, in our neighborhoods. We saw it with our family members, folks that we love and care about just weren't taking it as seriously as they needed to. She broached the idea of the organization, one that could focus on sending a clear message about healthcare choices while trying to eliminate our healthcare disparities. Essentially, she had me at hello.
You were like, oh yeah, this is 100%
I'm down.
And it's not the only thing that y'all are doing, right? Like this is just a piece of the very busy lives that each of y'all are working. So that's amazing that you not only carved out this time, but you found a way to make it as fast starting, really, because it's hard to start up a nonprofit or even just to keep one going with the motion. So and also y'all have a pretty big team, and not to sidetrack too much from here, but y'all have a pretty big team. How did you get more and more people into your initiative? How did you get like
Shanice
entire list?
Shanice just hypnotizes them.
It's my Sith ways. I'm bringing them all to the dark side. Period.
Seriously,
it is.
Yeah, I think seriously, it's just when at your core you just want to do good and help people, people are attracted to that. And anyone who knows Shanice knows that she has this amazing, somewhat unique passion for Black people. For people that grew up in her community, not just for, and I can't even say it. She has a unique passion for people who are invisible, people who don't get the attention that they deserve, don't get the respect they deserve, and aren't able to live in their dignity in the way that, most other folks get to. So, that just reverberates, through her energy, and it's hard to not be attracted to that. So I think every time we've asked somebody, will you, join on and help with this fight? There's never been a hesitation, because I think they are just attracted to the work we're doing and how passionate we are about doing that work.
Yeah, and a lot of it's about energy. Yeah. So that's awesome. Aside from the bio that I read out front about the geeks and the hackers, and what is, at its essence, what is Hood Medicine about?
We're about protection. That's really what it comes down to. For centuries, Black and brown communities have been, unable to trust government, unable to trust the medical community, healthcare community. We have been a community that's been subjugated to second-class citizenship in so many ways. And I think Shanice and I knew that when this pandemic hit, it was just going to be another case of the same thing happen all over again. And so we knew we had to step in and do something. We had to step in the fray and do something. And one of our mottos just kind of was born out of that. We want people in the community to help us save us. That's really what it comes down to, just help us save us. So, we're about fulfilling the need for trusted and credible people to speak to our community. And we talked about that early on, but talk to people in a way that takes into account all the history of suffering that we've endured, all the inequity, the experimentation, the exploitation, understanding all of those things that Black folks and brown folks have historically been subject to. You have to start with that as a foundation in order to build trust with folks.
Yeah, can't sweep it under the rug.
Yeah, you can't really effectively talk to anybody about protecting themselves without understanding what those folks have suffered through and why this disparities exist in the first place. So, Hood Medicine is about protecting folks, protecting the community, and helping people get invested in protecting themselves and their community as well.
No, that's amazing. And it's a big task. One of the polls I was reading was not necessarily saying that there's this huge disparity between the white and Black community. I believe it was an NPR Marist poll as far as vaccine hesitancy. But you're right. There's definitely this culture of a lot of the family members, even that I've seen, or just different friends I've talked to, where they're just like, how serious is this really? On a level that's going to impact me or impact my family, and yet you're seeing these disparities in the outcomes for healthcare. And so, with that said, where do you want to go with it? Because y'all are on fire right now. But if you continue on with this fire, where does that bring you?
Where we're at right now is it's a really exciting place. We're working with MIT and also my grad school alma mater, University of Louisville, and trying to start, applying for grants and putting ideas together for things that will help people immediately. We're working with Project Global Impact, who designs these really cool, like prefab, like just like throw up shipping container, like mobile vaccination units. And that's kind of like what we're doing on the pandemic front. But we have so many different like sort of pockets of interests in our org. We've got a group dedicated now to disability issues. I'm disabled, and I got some of my friends together and was just like, we need to work on this, because one of my really good friends, Kate White, she does this really cool just service just out of the kindness of her heart, like where she like literally is like this health advocate for people who are disabled or have like mysterious illnesses, and she tries to help them find care and find the answers for what's wrong with them. And we are like, we need to help you formalize this so that more people can have access to it, and then we have a group that is going to be dedicated to transgender health. Like, if you want to talk about health disparities, like they're passing bills on transgender visibility today. They're out here passing laws that allow medical providers to refuse treatment. Like, this is a society we live in. You know what I mean?
Systemic thing. And and you see stuff like that and a lot of the system stuff. Does your organization handle anything or connect more people in your community to like mental health services? One of the things that other thing we're talking about was the overlooming case for a lot of the Black community today or for a lot of Black Americans, is that Derek Chauvin case that's happening today. And that can wear on you, time after time after time, again, seeing people who look like you being ended up dead in the news. So do y'all handle any of that, like mental health, or do you connect to other organizations that do?
Yeah, we tackle all levels of health disparities and inequities in our community. It's interesting you asked that question, because two of our most recent chats, our Hood Met chats, which is one of our signature events, have been about the psychology and mental health of folks in our community. We focus first on talking about the trauma of going through a pandemic, the trauma of loss, being isolated, and all the things that folks are going through now, and how to handle that, and where to look for resources and help. But we also had a conversation about young people and children, and how this is an unprecedented event that they've had to go through, and they will be impacted by this for the rest of their lives. My children themselves have been in my home for over a year now. They haven't been inside of a school building for over a year, and there's an impact that's going to have on them that we won't yet know how it'll work out. So we talk about mental health. We pulled in some of the folks we had on our Hood Met chats into our organization. We want to focus on mental health and public health in that respect. And we also want to, and I think maybe Shanice can talk about this a little bit, connect those mental health professionals with community activists so that people in the community can know where and how to get resources.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it too, that word of mouth. So that's awesome. And is that what you're seeing, Dr. Hudson?
I mean, so far, we've tried a couple things here and there, and just from our chat, we were able to connect. One of the Black Lives Matter organizers in Nashville was able to connect some of his people in Boston with one of our new mental health coordinators for Hood Medicine. And so now she's going to be working to try to help those people in Boston get access to those services. And if that model works, then we're going to scale it up and try to deploy it everywhere.
That's really exciting. What are the things that you're dealing with day over day? So just at Hood Medicine, normal day, would you say is like, do you see like a scatter shot of a bunch of different things that are obstacles that you need to address, or do you feel like you're trying to boil an ocean there, or what's happening?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it's at once, we're a nascent organization, so of course we're trying to like get the word out, because obviously we need to, raise funds for the programs that we're trying to implement. We have all these brilliant minds assembled, and we'd like to put some of their ideas in practice. So of course, part of what we do, a large part of what we're doing right now, is being such a young organization, is raising funds. And so one of our advisors, Charles Centeo, is like the visiting MLK professor at MIT this year at the Sloan School of Business. So we're kind of working with him to maybe look at some health disparities grants in that regard. And then we're also sort of building our partnerships and networks, right? So we're working with Brandywine Creek Farms to try to address food insecurity, because that is also a huge part of this pandemic. And if we want to promote health in our communities, we can't do that without acknowledging that these people need their basic needs met. You know what I mean? Before we start telling them about health and wellness, people are hungry. You know what I mean? So we're trying to, meet those immediate needs. Right now, our entire focus is on the pandemic, right? But we have, the mental health group. We have like 4 people in that group now, including our advisor, who's a psychologist. And so it's just, everyone's sort of starting to, put forth their own ideas for like programming. But so we have long-term goals for like, addressing all these health disparities. And right now we're just trying to get jabs in people's arms, basically.
I think, we realize that people, particularly, Black and brown people, have been unfairly blamed for their poor health outcomes. And that's no different when it comes to the hesitancy, folks in our communities have towards any new type of experimental drug or therapy. What we know is that there's a history of unethical and immoral treatment of Black people by both the medical community and the government. And then now we have these vaccines that are being proffered by both the medical community and the government. So add to that the perception that these vaccines are still in the experimental phase, and Black folk have a very steep hill to climb in order to trust what's going on out here. But although that hill is steep, it's not insurmountable. And as we talked about a little bit earlier, we've seen with our work, once you give folks in the community the truth from credible sources, once you give them access to their healthcare needs, you see an uptake increasing. My church in Somerset, New Jersey, First Baptist Church of Lincoln Gardens, Reverend DeForest Soaries, he was able to get the church to act as a vaccine center in an urban area of our community. In 12 hours, he got 3,000 people signed up to get vaccinated. 12 hours, right? So what does my church represent in my community? My church represented a credible, trusted source of people, right? And it represents access, right? So the result from having credible people and access is a willingness in the community to get vaccinated at a higher take, right? So the same is true for all health disparities. If medical institutions and governments, if they look in the mirror and realize that they are the first step in eliminating health disparities, and part of that conversation has to include acknowledging why they aren't trusted sources in our communities. Once they do that, we can start, lowering the barrier to better outcomes for people of color.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of your job here with the vaccine hesitancy, lowering that, is equal parts communications and just getting that information lined up, but also a huge part of that sounds like it's community organizing. Is that a big part of what y'all do, is just trying to, hey, this is a good resource, or this is the most trusted person in this community, here might be the perfect messenger, or has that been true?
Yeah, absolutely. We're like in our technological solutions, and even in all our analog plans too, we're trying to kind of build everything into a phone tree. If we figured out how that one church did it, we're going to figure out how to do it for 30 churches. And we're going to get somebody on the phone and make sure they can all fill out the forms and do it. Like whatever works, we'll try it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We need people to get vaccinated. And like he was saying with the hesitancy, you know, that's the big story. And I'm glad that it is, because we're, you know, the inequities that exist and have for centuries are in high relief now, to the surprise of only a few.
Yeah.
And so for us, you know, now that we're in this moment, it's important that we try to seize the attention that people are finally giving it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that we can address it. Because, you know, we like to say, you know, we all we got, because we feel like, I don't know, maybe we don't all feel this way, but I do kind of, as a cynic, feel a certain helplessness towards petitioning the systems, the institutions of our society. It seems like a futile, you know, trap that every generation falls into. Like, oh, we're going to rise up this generation and make them listen to us this time. Yeah, this is going to happen this time, you know, and we just don't operate from that premise. We're not petitioning anyone. We're trying to find a way to get around the broken systems and get people what they need immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are using part of the system. I think I saw that y'all are doing work with the ad council to try and get more messaging out about the vaccine, but also just specifically trying to make sure that the messaging is more inclusive to Black communities and to Black people who are just living their day over day lives. What's been your experience with that? Has it been weird kind of working with different organizations or trying to educate other people? Because that's an emotional labor in and of itself.
It is very much so. It's been interesting. You know, like they're actually working with hundreds of community organizations across a lot of the different like target populations that they're interested in. So we're actually working with the Joy Collective as just like ad hoc advisors to like help with media and events targeting our communities. And I think it's just, you know, it's easy to want to grab onto that soundbite of the disparity of like the Tuskegee experiment of like, we're all hesitant, you know, it's easy to want to grab onto that and like only address that. And like what we're here to do is introduce the nuance, right? Because we're hood medicine. We want to make sure we reach in the hood. You know what I mean? And so that's our sole goal. You know, I think that a lot of times, and this isn't relevant to them at all necessarily, but what we've seen over this time, over this whole pandemic, is everyone reporting the same thing, right? All the scientists coming to the same conclusions. Someone needs to go reach out to the Black community. We all touched and agree that they're being left behind, right? But we're just trying to be the bridge, you know, to like actually start making those inroads. So
yeah, and as that bridge, eventually, like you said, there's going to be this more and more attention put onto the Black community of how we're just dealing with the pandemic in general, but also how internally just those community structures are built. If you had, I guess, any help from the federal government, in particular, let's say the Biden administration, if one of them was listening right now, what would you say would be helpful things that the government could do to help organizations like yours try to accomplish a mission, or at least not be in the way of the mission that you're trying to accomplish?
Well, you know, I say I'm thankful. You know, back to something that Nisi said earlier about us, you know, working to protect ourselves and whatnot. I'm thankful that we are in an administration that believes in science, and an administration that that sees, you know, people of color. But regardless of whatever administration we would be in or working in, because, you know, we're not guaranteed to have a Biden-like administration forever. You know, we need them to understand that healthcare needs to be accessible, it needs to be affordable, and it needs to be trustworthy. Those three things are important. And, you know, trust has been underscored in this conversation over and over again, because in our community, if members of our community don't trust that they're going to get proper care from the doctors, if they don't think their doctors are truly concerned about their health, if they believe, you know, going to the doctor brings more problems than just staying home, they'll never get the care that they need. If they can't afford medical care, they'll opt to forego diagnosis and treatment. And if they can't access medical care, we know what happens in that case. But access is an interesting thing because access isn't just about having community health centers in our neighborhoods, right? Access also means being able to take time away from work to go and be seen for an ailment without the fear of losing your job or because you can't afford to take 2-3 hours away from work. There are individuals in our community who work hourly wages, and 2-3 hours is a significant chunk of their weekly wages. But access also means, having adequate childcare so that you don't have to worry about your children while you're being treated. Access involves, filling many of the social gaps that exist in communities of color, as well as, poorer and rural communities across the country. But addressing all of these issues leads to a society where everyone can truly afford to live a healthier life. And that's really the goal. And incidentally, while we as Hood Medicine Initiative continue to work to attack the healthcare disparities, with directed action and with valuable information to our communities, we're also trying to create a social welfare arm of the organization, which will focus on achieving some of the policy goals that we have. The Hood Medicine Project will work to shape and address the policy issues that cause these inequities, while also working to address issues like environmental justice and the challenges that affect communities of color, challenges that aren't really, spoken about, very often. Dr. Hudson mentioned earlier talking about, agricultural growth and, gardening and things of that nature. Food deserts are something that affects so many folks of color across this country, and create, a host of other health issues, for us. So, we definitely believe in connecting to policymakers and politicians to attack what we want to do from a different angle. But our underlying principle is folks that look like us have to be invested in helping us save us.
Yeah. No, 100%. I guess one of the other questions that comes to mind also, especially whenever we talk about it, healthcare in the frame of any government administration, is the importance of representation, that messenger, whenever you're talking about vaccine information or disinformation. What do y'all think is the role of having not just a tokenization of Black medical professionals, but having meaningful outreach to Black communities from the federal government? What do you think that would look like in a way that doesn't hinder the effort that you're trying to accomplish at the same time?
I think
it's a big question.
It's a big question. It's hard to say because, some of my answers will have to be predicated on, the presumption that the government cares about the health and the well-being of its citizens and doesn't just see them as a commoditized unit of labor. So it's hard to say because when you put politics in it and when people are invested in hear healthcare, what they hear is, no, we want to maintain the status quo, whether we have people who do deserve healthcare and people who don't deserve healthcare. And we want to be able to dictate who goes in each of those buckets.
Yeah.
And so that's why I guess I say I'm a cynic about petitioning the system. Jonathan is more optimistic, and that's why he's the chair of our policy org.
Tell us about it then. What makes you so much more optimistic about it?
Yeah, right. But for now, I think maybe was resonating for people with us is that, we're not just out here trying to be a prop, we operate on the basis of knowledge, understanding, and choice. So we want people to feel like we've given them the information they need where they understand what's going on. And then they can make the right choice that, for their family, for their safety. I emphatically try to impose my choice and my logic on people because I want to save their lives. And as a scientist, I want to stop the spread of disease vectors all across the globe. But what the government could do and what we've seen success with, and I don't even know what that looks like because, like I said, first they would have to care. But I feel like for us, what matters to people is that we hold space for that grievance, right? Like the place where you can express how frustrating it is to be in a system that disregards your humanity, and to live in a body that's needs healing that you can't get simply because of the bias of the person that could give you that healing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's like that's the cornerstone of my life and my experience. And if I'm this passionate about this organization and thinking that we can help people, it gives me hope, because if I feel like I'm gonna help somebody, and we are, then I have to believe that I could get what I need. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
you can make the change you want to see. And it's true. Jonathan, what makes you so optimistic about the same system being, especially on the policy side? Like how do you take that same experience that Dr. Hudson is talking about, and that same trauma, that same grief, and the seemingly endless cycle of mistreatment, and you break that with policy? What makes you optimistic that you're going to be able to accomplish that?
So Dr. Hudson's being kind. I wouldn't use optimism as the word to describe it. I think I'm pretty cocky, right? I'm pretty cocky, and so I know that I have a message that's important. I know that my message saves lives. I know that those lives are important, and so I also understand that everyone speaks a different language, and everyone has different skills and talents. And I think I've, been given the talent to talk to folks in a way about serious, political issues, in a way that they can understand, sometimes relate to. And because I think I have that talent, I think I have to use it to the best of my ability to push forward issues that matter the most to me. So I find myself in pools of pessimism all the time. It's really hard to watch this Derek Chauvin trial and not believe that he's going to walk. It's really very difficult to do that.
Right.
But I know that, we have a purpose. I see my purpose, and I see Shanice's purpose, and I see the purpose of every member of our organization. And I have to believe that we're able to express that purpose to other individuals in a way that they will find compelling and find it necessary to support the things that we feel need to happen.
100%. And while y'all are doing this work, and while y'all are doing all this amazing organizing and communications, how are y'all taking care of yourselves? Because that's a big thing. I think a lot of Black people, Black professionals in particular, and that's what this show is about people like y'all. How are you approaching the self-care of yes, I'm going to take all this entire burden of food deserts and of vaccine education and of just the entire experience, Black experience, at least when it comes to the medical community. I'm going to take that on my back, and I'm going to just walk with it as far as I can. How are you making sure that you don't or just making sure that you take care of yourself? You have a little bit of hood medicine for yourself. How are you doing?
She can punch me in my stomach later. But I have to remind Dr. Hudson often that it is important for her to take care of self. You really can get so invested in this thing, especially, you can tell it's very personal. It's personal to all of us, but it's especially personal to Dr. Hudson. We've all interfaced with white supremacy and racism in some way, but when it directly impacts your everyday life and your ability to live as a regular human being, it really becomes personal, and you want to pour everything you have into it 24 hours a day. So I have to often remind Dr. Hudson that she needs to take a break and to do well for herself. But I think the thing that keeps us going and the underlying foundation of our self-care is the love that we have for one another. We check on one another. We ask how we're doing. we take this stuff seriously, but not so seriously. We allow us some time to laugh and joke with each other and, say some silly stuff and whatnot. And then we have our families, who take care of us as well and provide the support we need and give us the outlets that we need to take. So it's tough, but, we know we have to do it.
Yeah.
I knew that question was a setup. Did y'all talk about that while I was trying to figure out the link?
Yeah. No, it just, it's one of those things that
you set that up for him to scold me, didn't you?
Yeah. Jonathan specifically asked me to ambush you right here while we're doing this live show.
Yeah.
Well, I think
it's important, especially now, like with everything that's going on. It's hard. I personally can't. I've been listening to like commentary and stuff like on Clubhouse, like on my headphones, because I don't even have the temerity to watch the trial. I don't want to see the videos again. It's too much. It's a lot. Everything we do is based on love. That's what's so exciting about it, because it's like, even though we kind of grew from all these little associations in our network, now new people are becoming best friends, and like all these other connections are happening. So it's all love. It's really a beautiful thing to be a part of.
All about community. And speaking of which, if people want to tap more into your community, where can they find you online if they want to just keep up with Hood Medicine?
So we're at Hood_Medicine on Twitter and Insta. And then on Facebook, we're at Hood Medicine Initiative. And then we also you can find Hood Medicine on LinkedIn and YouTube as well.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to put those links into the chat. If not,
and our website is www.hoodmedicine.org. So
perfect. Yeah. Well, I want to thank both of you for being here today and being really personal and being very real about the stuff that y'all are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. It's powerful, and I think that it's going to help a lot of people, not only the people who you're helping, but also everybody who's going to watch this show and be like, yeah, all right, I can do this. I just have to make sure I don't overwork myself, or I just have to have a clear vision of what we're doing. So that's awesome. And I want to also thank everybody who's at home watching. If you made it all the way through this episode, I want to thank you so much. And I also want to thank the donors who made shows like Black in S.T.E.M possible. It makes a huge difference when you donate to nonprofits like Hood Medicine or like March for Science, because then we're able to bring you this programming that is real and that is from the front lines, like over at Hood Medicine. So with that said, I want to say thank you again, and I hope that both you, Dr. Hudson, and also you, Jonathan, that you have a good rest of your night. Jonathan, I'm sorry I interrupted your vacation. And Dr. Hudson, thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. We need outlets like this, like Black in S.T.E.M. So I'm thankful that you gave us the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. And have a good night, everyone.
You too.